In today's society, most people fear to think. Most people fear to go deeper into their own life because the society has always limited their mind. The society has always detected on how they think. The religion has always detected on how they reason or how they think. But this is what I want to say. The freedom to think, that you have the freedom to think. You have the freedom. You think it is true. Thinking is not rebellion. It is reverence. Because when you think, you honor the mind that God gave you. The ability to question is not a curse of faith, but the confirmation of free will. Yet today, thinking has become a dangerous act. Questioning is often called rebellion, and silence is mistaken for holiness. But silence without understanding is not holiness. It is fear hiding behind devotion. The philosopher Socrates once said, "An examined life is not worth living." He wasn't rejecting faith, he was awakening conscience. Because what good is faith if it cannot stand the test of honest thought? When faith fears the question, it is no longer faith, it is ideology. And ideologies imprison the soul. Look at history. The same world that crucified Christ also burned thinkers in his name. The same temples built for worship became courts that silenced those who dared to reason. Yet every prophet, every true reformer was first a thinker who refused to worship lies. Moses questioned Pharaoh. Job questioned God. Jesus questioned tradition. Even Buddha questioned suffering itself. For faith and reason were never enemies. They are twin lights, one of the heart of the mind. St. Augustine once said, "I believe in order to understand." Descartes added in this principle, "I think, therefore I am." Philosophers are good in this. Between belief and thought lies a bridge of truth. Belief was without thought becomes superstition. Thought without belief becomes arrogance. But when both meet, you find wisdom. In many religious cycles, people are told to think too much as if thought is poison. In many religious cycles, people are told not to think too much as if thought is poison. But it was Albert Einstein who said, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." I repeat that science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. He saw that God is not threatened by curiosity because truth, wherever found, belongs to God. If faith is true, it should not fear reason. If reason is honest, it will lead to faith. When Galileo looked at the stars and said, "The earth moves," the church called it heresy. But centuries later, the same church admitted it was right. Truth does not lose when it is questioned. It grows. Only lies fears inquiry. And sometimes the most spiritual act is not to bow your head in silence, but to leave your mind in wonder. The mystic Rumi wrote, "Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth." I repeat, Rumi the mystic once wrote, "Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth." To unfold your own myth is to think, to wrestle with God as Jacob did until you find your blessing in the struggle. Thinking is wrestling with the divine until meaning is born. You see, thinking deeply is not pride. It is participation in creation. Because when you think, you create new form of truth. You continue the work of God himself, who began creation with a word. And a word is thought spoken aloud. That is why Thomas Aquinas said, "To one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible." He saw the harmony. Reason opens the mind. Faith opens the soul. Both are wings. And we were never meant to fly with one. Imagine. But what stops people from thinking freely? This is my question. First of all, fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of rejection. Fear of punishment. This is what stops people from thinking freely. And yet every true prophet stood alone at some point in the wilderness of thought. Even Jesus went to the desert, not to escape questions, but to confront them. So, the desert is not a place of doubt. It is the birthplace of revelation. Today, The world drones in noise. Everyone has opinion, but very few have thoughts. Thinking takes time, silence, and humility. As Kierkegaard once said, my greatest philosopher, he said, life can only be understood backward or backwards, but it must be lived forward. So when you think, don't rush to judge. Think to understand, because every judgment limits, but every reflection expands. The saints thought, the scientists thought, the poets thought, the rebels thought. What unites them is not their agreement, but their courage to see differently. God never gave uniform minds. He gave unique souls meant to reflect His infinite nature in infinite way. So why fear diversity of thought when it is a mirror of God's own creativity? The 13th century scholar Ibn Rashid Averroes once said, ignorance leads to fear, fear leads to hatred, and hatred leads to violence. This is the question. That is why societies that forbid thinking eventually breed violence. Because where thought dies, fear becomes law. My friend, thinking is not leaving God. It is walking towards Him with open eyes. Faith that demands blindness is not divine. Faith that invites reflection is. The mind is not your enemy. It is your elder. When you reason with honesty, you pray with your intellect. When you love truth, you worship your own spirit. Let them call you rebellious. You are not rebelling against God. You are rebelling against the prison built in His name. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the ink of the scholar is more sacred than the blood of the martyr. I repeat, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the ink of the scholar is more sacred than the blood of the martyr. Why? Because truth preserved in thought saves generation more than war could. So think, even if they misunderstand you, even if you stand alone, because standing alone with the truth is still standing with God. And when you pray tonight, don't just ask for blessing. Ask for clarity, the courage to question, the patience to understand, and the humility to change. For in the silent dialogue between your faith and your reason, God listens twice. Once through your words and once through your thoughts.